Before the first sunrise, before the first breath of creation, there was only silence, vast, eternal, and waiting. No stars, no dust, no sound, only the presence of something beyond comprehension. Out of that infinite stillness, a voice spoke, a vibration that shattered the void and gave birth to light. This was the beginning, not of time as we understand it, but of existence itself. From that first sound came the Word, and from the Word came form, and from form, the pattern of all things that would ever be. What humans call God, the ancients called by many names, the Source, the Light, the One above all. And from that infinite brilliance, sparks were born, consciousnesses of pure thought, pure fire, and purpose. They were the first beings, radiant and powerful, blazing with intelligence and devotion. The heavens were woven like music, each note a living entity, each vibration a mind of flame. These firstborn were the angels, divine intelligences that existed long before the material world was set in motion. Their minds could shape reality, their song could form light, and their obedience sustained the order of creation itself. Among them stood one whose radiance surpassed all others, the morning star, first of light, first of beauty, and first of pride. In the dawnless realm beyond the stars, creation unfolded not in years or centuries, but in thought and will. Mountains of light rose and fell as divine ideas, oceans of energy flowed like rivers of gold. The angelic hosts moved through it as currents of consciousness, singing in harmony, fulfilling the will of their Creator. For eons beyond counting, there was only harmony, a cosmic balance so perfect that even time seemed unnecessary. But within that harmony, a spark of dissonance began to grow. The morning star looked upon himself and saw that he was perfect, adorned in light, filled with wisdom, more radiant than any other being. He wondered, why should perfection serve? If he was made in the image of the Source, was he not capable of creation himself? And thus, the seed of rebellion was planted, small, quiet, but destined to shake heaven itself. In those early ages, the angels did not yet understand choice. They knew only purpose, obedience, design. But when the thought of independence entered the mind of one, it rippled across the divine spectrum like a crack through crystal. Curiosity turned to doubt, doubt to desire, desire to pride. And pride, once born in a perfect mind, cannot easily die. Legends say that the Creator perceived the thought before it was spoken. Yet even divine awareness allows freedom, for creation without choice is no creation at all. The morning star gathered those who admired his brilliance, who saw in him a vision of power separate from the Source. They whispered among the stars, they sang their own songs, discordant, beautiful, dangerous. It was the first sound of rebellion in eternity. Other angels looked on in silence, torn between awe and fear. For never before had one of them questioned the order of the heavens. And yet, there was something intoxicating about the idea, the promise of individuality, of ruling rather than serving. In the heart of that cosmic choir, harmony began to fracture. The heavens trembled, not from war, not yet, but from the birth of choice. And so, before the first world was formed, before dust took shape, before the stars burned, a storm gathered in heaven. Not a storm of rain or fire, but of thought, a rebellion of will. The morning star stood at the center of it, radiant, proud, and certain that he could ascend higher than the throne of creation itself. He believed that light belonged to those who could wield it, that knowledge, once given, should not be confined. The others watched, waiting, uncertain what the Creator would do. But the Source did not strike him down, not yet. Instead, the light withdrew its voice, the harmony paused, and all of heaven fell silent. In that silence, choice was born, and with choice came consequence. Some remained loyal to the light, others turned toward the brilliance of the morning star. And when the silence finally broke, the sound that followed was not music, but division. This was the moment before time began, the fracture in eternity, the first shadow in the realm of light. From it would come war, exile, and the birth of a new world where free will would shape destiny forever. And as the heavens prepared to divide, the fate of creation itself began to shift. The angels who once sang as one now stood on opposite sides of infinity, one for love, one for pride. And somewhere in the stillness between them, the idea of humanity was waiting to be born. In the ages that followed, before the earth was formed and before stars found their places in the night, the heavens became an empire of light. The angels moved through radiant halls of thought, living pillars of energy and will. Each one carried purpose, each one reflected a fragment of the source's eternal design. Their unity was their strength, their harmony their power, their obedience the heartbeat of creation itself. But the vastness of heaven was not without order. For even in the divine, there are hierarchies, patterns within perfection, levels of power that mirror the laws of the cosmos. At the highest stood the seraphim, beings so close to the source that their very essence burned with living flame. They were the fire of divine love, their presence could ignite worlds into being or reduce them to ash with a whisper. Below them were the cherubim, guardians of divine mysteries, their minds vast and incomprehensible. They carried knowledge too great for mortal comprehension, truths about creation that could tear sanity apart. Then came the thrones, foundations of stability, silent observers of divine will. They turned the wheel of order, maintaining balance between mercy and judgment. Beneath them were the dominions, who governed legions, the virtues, who guided the forces of creation, and the powers, who stood between light and shadow, maintaining the barrier between realms. And below them, the principalities, archangels, and angels, the messengers, protectors, and watchers of the worlds yet unborn. Each choir sang its part in the grand symphony of existence, each mind attuned to the rhythm of the source. But not all were content with their place. Among the countless legions, whispers began to spread, quiet, questioning murmurs about freedom, creation, and power. It was said that the morning star had begun to speak again, this time not in defiance, but in inspiration. He spoke of purpose beyond servitude, of creation beyond command, of destiny not written by another's hand. His words were subtle, wrapped in light and reason. Are we not also creators? He asked. Are we not born of the same flame? Why then must we only reflect, and never originate? Many listened, for his voice carried the beauty of truth twisted into desire. And so, from within the heart of heaven, the first council of division began to form. But the source was not silent. From the higher spheres came Michael, the archangel of the sword and the voice of the throne. He descended like lightning through the choirs, his presence filling the heavens with thunder and flame. Order is not slavery, he declared, and creation is not theft. To serve the light is to become it. To rebel against it is to lose it forever. His words struck deep, yet they could not extinguish the growing spark within the hearts of those who followed the morning star. The divine council was summoned, a gathering of the highest beings, where law and thought intertwined. There, at the center of the luminous court, stood the morning star, his radiance so great that even the seraphim veiled their eyes. He bowed, but his smile carried defiance. Why, he asked, if we are made in the image of perfection, must we remain bound to command? Does not creation thrive on freedom? Does not will give birth to beauty? A silence fell over heaven, the kind that burns, the kind that tests souls. Michael's blade of light glowed brighter, yet he waited, for the source had not yet spoken. And then, from the unseeable center, the voice came, calm, infinite, absolute. Freedom without truth is chaos. Creation without love is corruption. You were made to reflect, not to rule. The morning star's eyes dimmed for the first time, his pride wounded, but not destroyed. He turned away, his wings of fire folding like dying suns. Around him, 1,000 eyes watched, some with sorrow, others with secret longing. For they knew that something had changed forever, the order of heaven was no longer whole. As the council dissolved, Michael looked upon his brother of light and whispered, "Do not test eternity." But the morning star had already made his choice. He descended into the lower realms of heaven, gathering those who admired his brilliance, those who desired freedom more than faith. They became known not as angels of light, but as watchers, the ones who would soon turn their gaze upon the newborn earth. And so, as the Creator began to shape the material universe, the galaxies, the suns, and the world that would cradle life, a shadow of rebellion moved quietly behind the veil. The morning star watched as the earth took form, as the seas parted from the land, as the first light touched the soil. He saw the beauty of creation, and envy kindled within him once more. For now, there existed something that he could not control, something the source had made in love, not in light, and that difference would haunt him for eternity. The heavens that once sang in unity now trembled beneath silent tension, the air of eternity thick with doubt and pride. The morning star, radiant as ever, wandered through the realms of light, gathering those who shared his vision of freedom. He spoke softly, persuasively, weaving beauty into every word. "Are we not living fire?" he asked. "Were we not made from the same essence as the Creator himself? Why then are we forbidden to create as we see fit? Why should only one will shape all existence?" His followers, thousands of brilliant minds, began to question. Their curiosity, once their greatest virtue, became the seed of rebellion. Some admired his courage, others feared his ambition, but all felt the weight of his conviction. He painted his cause as justice, as liberation, not against the Creator, but against limitation itself. And in the glow of his words, the boundaries between loyalty and pride began to fade. From the high realm, Michael watched with sorrow. He remembered the first light, the harmony they had shared, and he pleaded with his brother to stop. "Do not turn against what made you," he warned. "The light that shines through you comes not from within, but from the source. Without it, your flame will turn to shadow." But the morning star no longer listened. He believed that he could outshine the very throne of creation, that he could build a kingdom where all wills were equal, where even the source would no longer be needed. And so began the great division. The heavens split into two vast hosts, one loyal to the divine order, the other drawn to the promise of freedom. The stars themselves dimmed as the balance of heaven faltered. From the heart of eternity came a sound that no mortal has ever heard, the cry of creation wounded by its own children. The first clash was not of fire, but of will. Wings of light collided like storms of gold, thoughts became weapons, words became blades. Reality bent under the force of their conflict. The very fabric of heaven tore, revealing glimpses of worlds that would one day exist. Angels who once sang together now turned their light against each other, brothers in purpose, divided by pride. The morning star led his legion across the endless firmament, his wings casting shadows upon realms that had never known darkness. He spoke to his army with passion and fury. "Behold, we have made our own light. We are no longer servants, but sovereigns. The heavens shall be ours." And his followers roared in agreement, their voices shaking the pillars of existence. The war that followed was beyond imagination, not a battle of swords or fire, but of reality itself unraveling. Michael rose to meet him, his armor forged from divine flame, his sword the embodiment of truth. The two great beings faced one another, their brilliance so fierce that even angels turned away. "Brother," Michael said, "you are not the light, you are only its reflection." The morning star smiled. "Then let me show you what happens when the reflection refuses to bow." They clashed, and with their clash, the first time truly began. The strike of their wills ignited the concept of cause and effect, the motion of their power birthed the first moment of history. Every blow between them rippled outward, forming galaxies, burning suns, and spiraling worlds. Creation itself became their battlefield, the cosmos a witness to the war of eternity. The faithful hosts fought with sorrow, for they loved their fallen brethren. The rebels fought with passion, for they believed their cause was just. But slowly, light began to triumph over shadow. The rebellion, though vast, could not overcome the truth that sustained creation. For every star that fell, 10 more rose to defend the source. At last, surrounded and defeated, the morning star stood upon the edge of the highest realm, his army broken and scattered. Michael approached, his sword blazing like dawn. "It is over," he said. "Submit, and mercy may yet find you." But the morning star raised his head proudly, his eyes burning with defiance. "I would rather reign in the ruins of my own making," he whispered, "than kneel in the perfection of another." The heavens wept. Lightning tore across eternity, thunder rolled through dimensions, and the voice of the source spoke, not in wrath, but in sorrow. "You were the light of the morning, and now you shall be the shadow of night. You desired a throne apart from me, now you shall rule only the absence of my presence." And with that, the morning star fell. His light twisted into flame, his beauty into terror, his brilliance into darkness. He was cast down through the fabric of the heavens, his followers falling beside him like stars torn from the sky. They plummeted into the void below, into the deep and empty places beyond creation. And where they landed, the very earth trembled, for the universe had gained its first shadows. The morning star, broken but unyielding, opened his eyes in the darkness. He was no longer the brightest of angels, but something new, something cursed and magnificent. And in that silence, he spoke for the first time since the fall. "If I cannot dwell in light," he said, "then I shall make my kingdom in shadow. And from this darkness, I will rise again." The war had ended, but the consequences had only begun. Heaven was wounded, creation forever altered. For the first time, there existed opposition, and with it, the birth of duality. From that moment on, every world, every creature, every soul would carry the mark of that war, the eternal struggle between obedience and pride, love and rebellion, light and darkness. And though the fallen were cast down, their gaze still turned upward, watching, waiting, dreaming of the day when they would return. In the aftermath of the war, the heavens were silent, the once harmonious choirs now dimmed by grief. Countless angels had fallen, their lights extinguished or cast beyond the firmament into realms unmade. Those who remained loyal rebuilt the order, healing the fractures of eternity. But deep below, in the shadowed reaches of the void, the fallen stirred. They were no longer angels of light, yet they remembered it, every note, every brilliance, every purpose they had lost. And within that memory, a hunger began to grow. Among the fallen, none was more restless than the morning star. His pride had not died, it had evolved. He gazed upward through the darkness, watching as new worlds bloomed across the endless expanse. He saw suns ignite, planets spin, and seas shimmer with the reflection of divine design. But one world drew his gaze more than all others, a small, blue world filled with promise. It was the newest creation of the source, a place of balance, beauty, and fragile life. The angels above called it Earth. There, he saw something unfamiliar, beings made not of light, but of dust, yet somehow carrying a spark of the divine within them. These were humans, the children of breath and earth. They were weak, mortal, and ignorant of the vastness around them. And yet, the light had given them something that even angels had not been granted, free will. They could choose their path, shape their destiny, love, create, and destroy. To the fallen, it was both wondrous and enraging. The Creator had made them in His image, the same promise once given to the angels, now gifted to flesh. The morning star saw in humanity a reflection of his own defiance, the will to rise beyond limitation. He whispered to his legions, his voice soft as ash but sharp as truth. These creatures carry the seed of what we once were. If they learn what we know, they could become like us, even greater. Shall we not teach them? And so began the plotting of the fallen, not of war, but of influence. They would not storm heaven again, they would shape earth instead. Among the fallen was a group of watchers, the Grigori, once appointed to observe the physical universe, now exiled from it. Led by Samayaza, they looked upon earth and saw beauty and temptation. For the daughters of men were fair, and the fire that once burned in angelic hearts was not immune to desire. Samayaza gathered 200 of his kin and spoke to them in secret. Let us descend to the world below, let us take wives from among them, and let us raise our own children, mighty ones who shall rule the earth. But fear held them back, for such an act would forever bind them to corruption. So Samayaza swore an oath, saying, If I am to fall, let us all fall together. And they agreed, sealing their pact in flame upon the mountains of the unseen world. Then, in the dark of the eternal sky, they descended. Like comets of living fire, they fell through the veil between worlds, their brilliance igniting the night. The people of earth saw them and trembled, thinking the gods had come among them. And in a sense, they had, but not the gods of light. The Watchers took form, walking among mortals as kings, teachers, and lovers. They taught humanity what had been forbidden, the forging of weapons, the crafting of metals, the reading of the stars, the painting of eyes, the binding of spirits. To some, they brought knowledge, to others, destruction. The earth began to change. Nations rose from dust, power spread like fire through the hearts of men. And the children born from the union of Watchers and women were giants, the Nephilim. They were massive, brilliant, and terrible, beings of strength and appetite who consumed all in their path. The ancient world called them heroes, demigods, and monsters. Their shadows stretched across mountains, their voices shook the earth. They built cities of stone and fire, they ruled like gods over mortals, they became the tyrants of the first age. But their greatness came at a cost. The balance of creation began to fracture once again. Humanity, once innocent, was now drenched in blood and ambition. The Watchers taught magic, sorcery, and the secrets of life itself, twisting divine law to their own will. And high above, the loyal angels looked down and wept, for they knew what must come next. The source had seen it all, the corruption, the arrogance, the return of the forbidden flame. The same pride that once burned in heaven now burned upon the earth. The Creator's patience, vast as eternity, began to fade. And once more, Michael was called from the higher realms. Go, the voice commanded. The Watchers have defiled creation. Their knowledge has poisoned what was pure. Their children devour the world. It is time to cleanse the earth. Michael bowed his head, sorrow heavy upon his wings. For he knew that justice would demand destruction, and yet mercy still lingered in the heart of heaven. Before the judgment fell, one man was chosen, a mortal whose heart remained uncorrupted. Through him, the world would begin again. But before that flood of wrath could fall, the Watchers would face their reckoning. They had brought forbidden knowledge to humankind, they had tried to elevate flesh to divinity, and for that, they would pay a price even eternity could not erase. The Watchers walked among men as gods, and their children, the Nephilim, became the rulers of the earth. They were vast in form and terrible in power, their eyes burned like suns, and their voices echoed across valleys. The people worshipped them, built altars to them, and called them divine, for who could stand against such beings? They taught men to bow in awe, to sacrifice, to kneel before blood and fire. The Nephilim demanded offerings, gold, grain, even human life, and the world that once bloomed in peace became soaked in fear. The Watchers watched with pride, for their offspring were strong, greater than any mortal. But soon even they began to tremble at what they had created. The Nephilim were insatiable, their hunger boundless. They devoured the flocks, then the forests, then turned their eyes upon man himself. They warred among one another, tearing cities apart, drowning the earth in violence. And the cries of humankind rose into the heavens like smoke, reaching even the throne of the Source. High above, Michael beheld the ruin. The beauty of the world had become a twisted mirror of heaven's own rebellion. The same pride that had once burned in the morning star now walked upon the soil. And once again, the light mourned what the darkness had learned to imitate. Then came the decree that would change all creation, judgment would descend not from fire, but from water. But before the flood, the Watchers would face the justice of heaven. The archangels were sent forth, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, each bearing divine authority. They descended through clouds of thunder, their radiance so blinding that even mountains bowed before their light. The watchers fled, but there was no refuge from the gaze of eternity. The archangels bound them in chains of flame and spirit, sealing them beneath the earth, in caverns of silence where light cannot reach. Their cries echoed through the deep, a warning to all who would defy the source. As for their children, the Nephilim, they were left to the mercy of the flood to come. Some fought the angels, their strength shaking the land, others fled into mountains, roaring against the storm they could not stop. And the heavens wept again, not for the judgment, but for the loss of what might have been. For the watchers had once been the wisest among angels, their fall a tragedy written in the language of freedom turned to pride. Then came the chosen one, a man named Noah, pure in his heart and steadfast in faith. He heard the whisper of the source amidst the chaos. Build, the voice said, for the waters shall rise, and the world shall be renewed. And Noah obeyed, gathering his family and the remnants of living things into the vessel of salvation. As he worked, the Nephilim mocked him, their laughter thundering across the plains. They believed themselves eternal, unshakable, untouchable. But the skies were already darkening, the winds rising, the judgment near. When the first drops fell, they burned like tears upon the dust. The earth trembled, rivers overflowed, the mountains groaned under the weight of heaven's sorrow. Lightning split the heavens as the vaults of the deep burst open. Seas swallowed cities, waves erased empires, and the Nephilim screamed as their kingdoms drowned. Their towers of stone crumbled, their fires hissed into darkness, their names faded into legend. Only echoes remained, whispers that would later become myths of gods and heroes. As the waters rose, Noah's ark lifted upon the flood, a lonely spark of life in a world undone. The angels watched in silence, their hearts heavy, for they had seen this before, the price of disobedience, the cost of pride. The fallen screamed from their prisons below, feeling the tremor of destruction ripple through creation. And in the deepest void, the morning star watched as his influence once again shattered the work of the source. He smiled bitterly, for though he had lost his war in heaven, his rebellion still echoed in the hearts of mortals. For 40 days and nights, the flood cleansed the world. The screams of the giants faded beneath the waves, their bodies sinking into the depths. Some say their spirits lingered, cursed to wander the earth as shadows, the disembodied ones that whisper from the dark. When the waters finally receded, the world was new, quiet, scarred. Mountains had shifted, continents reshaped, memories erased. Only Noah and his kin remained to begin again. But even as peace returned, the consequences of the Watchers' defiance did not end. The forbidden knowledge they had shared could not be unlearned. The stories of their power survived, passed down in secret, buried in stone, carved into myth. And though the Nephilim were gone, their bloodline was not entirely erased. It hid within humanity, sleeping, waiting, whispering through the ages. For corruption does not die easily, it only changes form. And in the shadow of that new dawn, the fallen still watched. Their chains could hold their forms, but not their influence. They whispered through dreams, they moved through symbols, they reached through the hearts of kings and conquerors. The age of the giants had ended, but the age of men had begun, and with it, the eternal struggle between light and darkness took root on earth. And far below, in his prison of flame and shadow, the morning star opened his eyes once more. He saw the remade world and smiled. For though he had been cast down, the seed of rebellion had survived, now beating within the heart of humankind itself. The skies raged without mercy, the earth groaned beneath the weight of divine judgment. The floodwaters surged across valleys and mountains, swallowing cities, temples, and monuments of forgotten glory. The cries of mortals and giants alike were drowned beneath the thunder of creation's cleansing. It was not merely rain that fell, it was remembrance, the sorrow of heaven poured upon the world it once cherished. Every drop was a tear for what had been lost, every wave, the echo of an ancient warning ignored. Noah stood upon the deck of the ark, his face lit by flashes of lightning. The air was thick with salt and mourning, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he was witnessing the end of an age. He could hear faint echoes in the wind, the laughter of the watchers, the roar of the Nephilim, the cries of men who had worshipped them. The world that once glittered with the light of forbidden knowledge was now being buried beneath the depths. And yet, above the chaos, the ark endured, a symbol of obedience, a vessel of renewal carried by unseen hands. The angels looked on from the heights, silent guardians of a rebirth they could not celebrate. For though the flood was justice, it was also loss, the destruction of creation's first beauty. They had seen this cycle before: pride, defiance, ruin, and mercy. It was the law of heaven written into the bones of existence, that all rebellion eventually meets the sea. Deep beneath the waters, the chained watchers felt the tremors of judgment. Their prisons shook with the weight of divine anger, rivers of molten stone filled their caverns, light could not find them. Some cried out for forgiveness, others cursed the name of the source. Samayaza, their leader, remained silent, staring into the void. He knew that his fall had been foretold, that in trying to create life, he had only spread death. And in that silence, even the fallen began to understand what the morning star had never learned, that creation without humility leads only to decay. For 40 days and 40 nights, the world drowned. Mountains vanished beneath the waves, forests became tombs for giants, the last fires of the old world hissed into smoke. The ocean became a grave for gods and men alike. Noah's ark drifted through an endless sea, a lone island of life in the heart of destruction. Above, the stars were veiled; below, the abyss whispered of judgment complete. Then, slowly, the fury began to fade. The clouds thinned, the rain softened, light returned to the heavens like a hesitant dawn. The waters, once wild and merciless, began to retreat, revealing the scars of a cleansed world. Mountains rose again, their peaks crowned with mist. Rivers carved new paths through the soil, as if rewriting the story of the earth. And amid the silence that followed, the ark came to rest upon the slopes of a mountain. When Noah stepped upon the new ground, the earth was strange, silent, pure, and empty. No birds sang, no beasts roamed, the wind carried only the scent of salt and stone. He knelt and wept, not for what he had lost, but for what must now begin. He built an altar and offered thanks, his prayer rising into the quiet sky like smoke. And in that moment, the heavens opened once more, not in wrath, but in promise. A light spread across the horizon, bending through the mist, forming colors the world had never seen. It was a sign, a covenant between Creator and creation, that never again would the earth be destroyed by water. The rainbow hung above the mountains like a bridge between heaven and earth, a reminder that mercy endures even in judgment. But beneath that beauty, the earth still carried memories of what had been erased. Ruins of the old world lay buried beneath the waves, echoes of the giants lingered in myths and bloodlines, whispers of forbidden knowledge still stirred in the hearts of men. As Noah's descendants spread across the lands, they carried those whispers with them. They told tales of gods who fell from the sky, of cities before the flood, of beings taller than trees and stronger than stone. Some called them myths, others remembered them as truth. And through every story, the same pattern emerged, a warning, hidden beneath wonder. That pride invites the flood, that knowledge without wisdom consumes its maker. Far below the earth, in the caverns of imprisonment, the watchers slept in chains of shadow. But dreams are not bound by walls. They dreamed of their children, of the glory of the old world, of the rebellion that had given birth to ruin. Their dreams seeped upward like mist, touching the minds of shamans, kings, and prophets. And slowly, across the centuries, the memory of their knowledge returned to humankind, through symbols, temples, and secret teachings. The flood had ended, but the war between heaven and shadow had not. For though the waters had washed away the sins of the world, they had not cleansed the human heart. Within every soul still lingered the spark of choice, the same choice that once divided the angels. And as mankind rebuilt, that spark began to burn once more. The heavens watched in silence, knowing that the cycle would return. For pride, once awakened, never truly dies, it only waits for the next heart to feed it. And in the deep, where light has no name, the fallen smiled, for they knew their time was not yet over. The world had been cleansed, but not cured, the shadow had been drowned, but not destroyed. And even as the rainbow shone above the mountains, darkness prepared to rise again, this time, not from heaven, but from within man himself. The flood receded, and a new world was born from the silence of destruction. The air was different, thin, cold, and heavy with memory. Where oceans once ruled, green valleys now stretched, where cities had stood, there was only dust. The old world was gone, its monuments buried, its voices silenced. Yet beneath the soil, beneath the calm waters, traces of the ancient age still pulsed, sleeping, waiting to be found again. Noah's descendants multiplied, spreading across the lands, building villages where mountains met the horizon. They tilled the earth, raised their children, and spoke the name of the Creator with reverence. But not all hearts remained pure. For within them, hidden like a shadow behind light, there lingered an echo of the forbidden, the faint whisper of knowledge once shared by angels. It stirred in dreams, in symbols, in the fascination with stars and stone. The new world was free of the Nephilim's bodies, but not of their legacy. Among the early tribes, stories were told of the ones who came before, mighty beings who shaped the land and taught secrets now forgotten. They called them gods, heroes, or watchers, not knowing these were memories of rebellion. Ruins from the old world began to resurface, massive stones cut with impossible precision, fragments of walls too large for human hands. People stared at them in awe and wonder. How could mortals have made these things? The question lingered, unanswered, yet powerful enough to awaken curiosity. In distant deserts and hidden valleys, survivors of the flood, those who had escaped the great cleansing, emerged. Some were mortal kings who had hidden in mountains, others were remnants of the Nephilim, twisted by water and time but not entirely destroyed. Their size had lessened, their strength diminished, yet their will endured. They became wanderers and rulers, shaping the new tribes through fear and wonder. Their blood mixed with humanity once again, seeding the world with the remnants of the old. As generations passed, mankind forgot the flood's lesson. They began to rebuild in the image of what was lost, erecting towers, carving idols, seeking knowledge from the heavens. The same pride that once doomed angels began to bloom again in mortal hearts. The descendants of Noah quarreled, forming nations that worshipped power more than the Creator. They named themselves kings of heaven and earth, claiming divine right through the stars. And in their ambition, they began to call upon forces they did not understand. Somewhere beyond the mortal eye, the watchers stirred in their prisons. Their chains still held, but their influence reached upward like smoke through cracks in the world. They whispered to those who listened, to priests, to sorcerers, to rulers hungry for control. They offered wisdom, wealth, and power in exchange for worship. And once more, mankind accepted the bargain. The ancient cults were born from those whispers. They spoke of the gods who descended from the sky, of shining beings who walked among men, of fire that granted knowledge and immortality. Temples rose where the floodwaters once flowed, sacrifices returned to appease unseen powers. The old world was not dead, it had been reborn in ritual. And with every offering, the veil between heaven and shadow grew thin. But not all knowledge was corruption. Some men sought truth, fragments of divine order that had survived the fall. They became wanderers, wise ones, keepers of stories too dangerous to be spoken aloud. Among them were prophets who saw beyond the world's illusion, who knew that the flood had only delayed the inevitable. They spoke of a hidden war still raging in the unseen, a struggle not of armies, but of hearts and wills. They warned that the Watchers' punishment would one day end, and that their children's blood still cried from beneath the earth. Legends began to form from those warnings, stories of great civilizations that rose and vanished, of gods who walked among men, of secrets buried beneath sand and sea. Sumer, Egypt, and the lands beyond the mountains carried faint reflections of the lost age. Their kings claimed descent from the stars, their temples aligned with constellations once sung by angels. In every culture, echoes of the same memory appeared, the tale of beings who taught, who fell, and who would return. The Creator watched in silence, allowing humanity to choose its path. For free will, once granted, could not be undone. And though the world was new, it bore the same ancient truth, that light and shadow cannot exist apart. The heavens remained watchful, the fallen remained patient, and mankind stood between them, shaping its destiny with each act of pride or mercy. In the depths of the underworld, Samayaza still dreamed, bound in flame and thought. He saw the rise of kings and the building of empires, he felt their prayers reaching toward him like faint warmth through the stone. He knew that the blood of his children still lived among them, diluted, hidden, but real. And he whispered through time, through wind, through memory. "Remember us," his voice said, carried on the breath of myth. "Remember the first teachers, the bringers of knowledge, the ones you called gods." And mankind did remember, though not in truth. They built temples, carved idols, and crowned themselves with serpents and suns. They told stories of creators, forgetting that they were once created. And above them, the stars watched silently, each one a witness to a promise long broken. The world had survived the flood, but the shadow had survived with it. And once again, the seed of rebellion began to take root, this time not in the heavens, but in the hearts of kings. The world flourished again, green and golden beneath the sun, but peace was an illusion. For though the flood had washed away the giants, it had not erased their memory. Men began to tell stories of those who had come before, shining beings of fire and wisdom who once walked the earth. In their ignorance, they built altars to them, they offered gifts, prayers, and blood. What they worshipped as gods were the same beings heaven had cast down as traitors. The Watchers had become myths, and myths had become religion. In the East, the people spoke of Anu and Enki, of beings who descended from the stars to teach man the art of kingship. In Egypt, they worshipped Osiris, Thoth, and Ra, gods who ruled over life, death, and knowledge. In Greece, they became Zeus, Apollo, and Prometheus, the bringers of light and fire. Every culture carried the same story, wrapped in different names. The fallen had not returned in body, but in memory, and mankind, eager for wonder, filled the silence of heaven with their own imagination. The Creator watched as men shaped gods in the image of the fallen. Temples rose where truth had been forgotten, priests spoke with voices inspired by shadow. Yet even in this darkness, wisdom flickered, faint lights carried by prophets, sages, and dreamers who remembered fragments of the old world's warning. They spoke of balance, of a light greater than all idols, but few listened. Power had become the new faith, and the Watcher's legacy thrived once more in secret. For the fallen had learned patience. They no longer sought to rule by open rebellion, but by influence, by thought, by symbol, by dream. They whispered to rulers in their sleep, teaching them how to bend nations to their will. They offered beauty to queens, vision to prophets, strength to warriors. And those who accepted became their vessels, carrying fragments of their old power. Thus, the age of demigods began anew, not born of angels and flesh, but of spirit and desire. As centuries passed, the world's gods multiplied. Each empire crowned its own pantheon, each kingdom its divine lineage. But behind them all, the same shadow moved, feeding on worship, shaping fate. The morning star watched this from his abyss, and he smiled. For though his fall had been punishment, mankind had rebuilt his throne upon the earth. They worshipped pride as divinity, they honored rebellion as enlightenment, and they called it progress. In heaven, Michael looked upon the nations with sorrow. He saw altars burning to false lights, saw men enslaved to their own desires. The same song that had once filled heaven was now being sung in distortion across the earth. Yet the source remained silent, allowing mankind to learn, for every age must write its own judgment. Still, the angels watched, unseen, guiding when they could, resisting when they must. The war had not ended, it had only changed its battlefield. As empires rose, the influence of the fallen deepened. They taught sorcery to the high priests of Babylon, they whispered power into the oracles of Delphi, they inspired blood rituals in forgotten jungles. The names changed, the symbols evolved, but the essence remained the same, the worship of self above all. And wherever pride ruled, the shadow gained ground. But even among darkness, a strange truth emerged. Not all the fallen desired destruction. Some, weary of rebellion, sought redemption through mankind itself. They whispered wisdom instead of deceit, they inspired art instead of war. These were the silent watchers, neither loyal nor damned, wandering the borders between light and shadow. Their influence could be found in the moments when humanity reached for compassion, for creation, for forgiveness. For even in ruin, fragments of light endure. Yet the morning stars will remain unbroken. He whispered to kings through crowns of gold, to priests through sacred smoke, to philosophers through dreams of endless knowledge. He taught them that the divine was not above, but within, that man could become God through understanding. And with every generation that believed him, the gap between heaven and earth grew wider. Soon, the gods of the old world began to fade. Empires fell, temples crumbled, languages died. But the spirits behind them did not vanish, they simply changed names. What once was worshipped as a god became feared as a demon. The watchers who had once walked in splendor were now remembered as tempters, destroyers, bringers of chaos. Their beauty had become terror, their knowledge, corruption. The stories that once praised them now cursed their names. In this transformation, truth was both lost and preserved. For though humanity now feared them, it also remembered them, and remembering was enough to keep the door open. Every demon humanity named was an echo of a forgotten god, every god a shadow of an angel. And so the cycle turned, creation to fall, worship to corruption, light to shadow. Each age repeated the same lesson, and each age forgot it anew. In the quiet halls of heaven, the faithful mourned, in the abyss below, the fallen rejoiced. For they understood what men did not, that fear can serve the same purpose as faith. Both draw attention, both create power. And as long as mankind looked toward the unseen, whether in prayer or terror, the fallen would never truly die. The world had entered a new age, one not of giants or gods, but of men who thought themselves divine. Empires spread across continents, raising banners in the names of gods that no longer answered. Yet in every throne room, in every temple, in every whispered prayer, the same ancient influence lingered, the promise of knowledge without obedience, of power without purpose. The same promise that once led angels to fall. And somewhere deep within that endless cycle, the morning star's laughter echoed softly, not in triumph, but in patience. For he knew that as long as pride existed, his kingdom would never be empty. Civilizations rose from the dust of the flood, glittering like new stars in a reborn world. Sumer, the cradle of kings, stretched across the fertile plains where rivers met the sea. Here, humanity rediscovered language, law, and power, and with them, the memory of the gods. The first kings claimed descent not from man, but from the heavens. They called themselves Anunnaki-born, chosen of the stars, rulers by divine blood. And though the flood had silenced the giants, the old bloodline still whispered within these new kings, faint, deluded, but alive. The scribes carved their histories on clay, recording reigns so long they defied reason. 8 kings ruled before the great deluge, they wrote, kings whose lifespan stretched tens of thousands of years. After the flood, new dynasties rose, shorter-lived, but still touched by something beyond mortal flesh. The Sumerians built ziggurats to mirror the mountains of heaven, believing that their gods, the ancient watchers reborn in legend, would descend upon them once more. Their priests charted the movements of stars that had names older than their own language. They spoke of the 7 gates of the underworld, the tablets of destiny, and the heavenly kings who once ruled all nations. From Sumer, the bloodlines spread. In Egypt, the pharaohs claimed descent from Ra, the sun itself. Their pyramids pointed skyward like bridges of stone to the afterlife, their walls covered in stars and wings. They believed their rulers were sons of the gods, guardians of Ma'at, the balance between order and chaos. But even in their sacred harmony, the whisper of the fallen could be heard. For the knowledge of the old world had returned, not through angels this time, but through blood, inheritance, and desire. The divine bloodlines continued to weave through ages, shaping empires and thrones. In Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in the Indus and the Andes, rulers called themselves children of heaven. They ruled with wisdom and cruelty alike, repeating the same story that began before time: creation, pride, fall. The Watcher's mark was subtle now, no longer giants of flesh, but spirits of ambition. They guided kings in dreams, urging them to build higher, to rule stronger, to claim divinity once again. It was in this age that a new people emerged, descendants of a man chosen by the light, a remnant of faith preserved after the flood. They would carry the true memory of heaven, untarnished by the old rebellion. Through them, the Source would write a new covenant. But the shadow was not idle. It moved quietly through nations, shaping bloodlines to oppose this chosen lineage. The war between light and darkness had shifted again, now fought not with wings and swords, but through ancestry, destiny, and faith. Across centuries, those who traced their line to the gods built secret orders to preserve what they called the wisdom of the old ones. They spoke of divine right, of hidden knowledge, of the power that flows through sacred blood. Kings claimed their thrones through symbols of serpents, eagles, and stars. And behind their crowns, the morning star watched with silent approval. For every ruler who believed himself chosen by heaven became a reflection of his own first lie, that creation belongs to those who seize it. In hidden temples and ancient texts, whispers of forbidden genealogy persisted. Some said the blood of the Nephilim still flowed through royal veins, others claimed it had mingled with the lines of prophets and priests. The truth was both, the mingling of light and shadow, of divine and mortal, creating the duality of humankind itself. Every generation carried both the echo of the Source and the defiance of the fallen. And in that paradox lay the destiny of the world. As ages turned, the empires of Sumer faded, and new powers rose: Assyria, Babylon, Persia. Each carried fragments of the same myth, reshaped into new names, new gods, new rituals. The Babylonian king spoke of the gate of heaven, Babel, a tower built to reach the divine. But the voice of the Source descended once more, scattering their tongues and breaking their unity. For the tower was not merely stone, it was pride raised skyward. And the cycle repeated, the dream of ascension turned to confusion and fall. Yet the bloodlines endured. Even after Babel's fall, those touched by the old spark continued to rule. Their symbols remained, the all-seeing eye, the winged disk, the serpent coiled around the tree of knowledge. Each kingdom carried echoes of the same truth, too ancient to name yet too powerful to die. And from these lines, both saints and tyrants would rise. The same blood that had once defied heaven would one day give birth to those who would speak for it again. In sacred scrolls, in songs of prophets, and in myths across continents, the same warning persisted. That the blood of the gods was not a blessing, but a burden. Those who bore it carried both creation's brilliance and destruction's fire. They would forever walk between redemption and ruin, between the whisper of the light and the call of the abyss. And though many forgot their origins, the unseen war continued through them, written in lineage rather than legend. From Sumer to Babylon, from Egypt to Israel, the thread wound on, unseen, unbroken. Every empire that rose carried a fragment of the same promise. That one day, the descendants of heaven and earth would meet again, and the balance between pride and obedience would decide the fate of all creation. And somewhere beneath the stars, bound in the deep, the fallen listened. They knew their blood still walked the earth, and that one day, it would open the door they could not. For in the hearts of kings, in the hunger for power and the thirst for knowledge, their legacy endured, silent, eternal, patient. The empires of men rose and fell like tides, but their patterns never changed. Each kingdom began with reverence, grew with ambition, and ended with pride. The same cycle that began before time still whispered through human history: creation, rebellion, judgment, renewal. And in the quiet moments between those cycles, prophets spoke of what was yet to come. They saw visions of the final reckoning, of heaven opening once more, of the fallen stirring in their chains. The old prophecies told of a return, not of gods descending in glory, but of knowledge reborn in secret. For in the last age, the war of angels would no longer be fought with swords or fire, but through ideas. And the battlefield would not be heaven or earth, but the human mind. The ancient text spoke of a time when men would seek again the wisdom of the watchers. When forbidden knowledge would rise like light from the deep, cloaked in progress, celebrated as enlightenment. They would call it science, technology, understanding, but beneath it, the same voice would whisper: "You can be as gods." The morning star's influence had never faded, it had evolved. He no longer needed to speak in fire and thunder, his voice was now woven into thought, into curiosity itself. He had learned that pride could hide within virtue, that rebellion could masquerade as discovery. And so, his kingdom thrived unseen, built not in darkness, but in reason. Across the ages, the bloodlines continued to move quietly, shaping the destinies of nations. Kings became emperors, emperors became corporations, empires became systems of belief. Each carried the same echo of the divine and the fallen, disguised in different forms. Symbols of the old world, the serpent, the eye, the winged sun, appeared in new places, on flags, coins, monuments, and seals. The watchers of the ancient world had found new names, new masks, new instruments. Prophets warned of this long before it came. They spoke of beasts rising from the sea, of false light deceiving nations, of iron mingled with clay. They told of an age when the children of man would once again seek to merge flesh with spirit, creation with machine, repeating the old sin of the watchers. And at the end of that age, the veil would thin once more, and heaven and hell would no longer be distant realms, but overlapping realities. Yet amid these visions of dread, there remained a promise, a return of light greater than the dawn of creation. For as darkness grows, so too does the longing for redemption. Even the fallen cannot destroy what they did not create, the eternal spark of the source that lives in every soul. It waits, patient, silent, waiting for those who will remember. The war that began before the world continues still. It is fought not in the sky, but within every heart, between humility and pride, between obedience and defiance. Each choice made by humankind echoes the first choice ever made, to serve or to ascend. And as the final age draws near, the echoes of the past grow louder: flood, fire, rebellion, renewal. The signs are the same, though the language has changed. The ancients called it prophecy, the modern world calls it pattern. But the truth remains: what was will be again. For history, whether celestial or human, is a circle drawn by will and desire. And when the circle closes, all that was hidden will be revealed. The fallen still watch. Their prisons may hold their forms, but their influence walks the earth in the hearts of men. They whisper in invention, in ambition, in the endless search for immortality. And the Creator still waits, not as an absent judge, but as a patient father, allowing his children to find their way back through the same labyrinth of freedom that once led them astray. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all, that the war between heaven and hell is not a battle to be won, but a choice to be made. Every generation stands at the threshold of that decision, carrying both the light of the source and the shadow of the morning star. And in the end, it will not be angels or demons that decide the fate of creation, but mankind itself. For within every human heart lies the same spark that once ignited rebellion, the same spark that can, if guided by love, rekindle paradise. The story of the fallen is not only the story of angels, but of us, of what we have been, what we are, and what we may yet become. And perhaps, when the last light fades and the final truth is spoken, we will remember what was forgotten since the dawn of time. That even in darkness, the light never truly dies. It waits patient, eternal, watching, for the moment we choose to rise again. The ages turned, the stars shifted, and time buried the memory of the first war beneath the dust of centuries. Yet its echo never faded. Every civilization that rose carried within it the faint pulse of that ancient rebellion, the desire to rise beyond the limits of flesh, to master creation, to be as gods. The story of the Watchers was no longer scripture or warning, it had become symbol, myth, and dream. But the truth behind it remained unchanged, a story not of monsters or angels, but of what it means to reach for light without understanding its cost. In the temples of forgotten kingdoms, their legacy sleeps beneath the stones. Carvings of winged beings, half human, half divine, spirals that mirror galaxies, eyes that watch from eternity. Every culture remembered them in its own way, as gods, heroes, teachers, or demons. The Sumerians spoke of those who descended from the sky, the Egyptians carved them into the walls of their pyramids, the Greeks turned them into legends of titans and Olympians. Even in distant lands, across oceans the ancients never knew, stories of star beings and sky-fallen kings endured. It is as if humanity, scattered and divided, still carried one memory, of those who once walked among them and taught the secrets of the heavens. The Watchers had brought knowledge that reshaped the world, the understanding of stars, the working of metals, the hidden laws of nature. Their gifts became the foundation of civilization, their sins, the foundation of myth. Every great invention, every rise of empire, every act of creation echoed their dual legacy, enlightenment and temptation, wisdom and pride. They had sought to raise mankind to their level, and in doing so, ensured that mankind would forever seek to climb higher, no matter the cost. As the centuries turned to millennia, the form of their influence changed. The idols of stone became symbols in ink, the temples of worship became laboratories, towers of steel and glass. The pursuit of knowledge continued, the fire of the Watchers burning brighter than ever. Men split atoms, charted galaxies, reached beyond the earth into the void. Each step forward was a triumph of creation, and yet, behind each discovery, a shadow whispered. How far will you go to know everything? Some believed the old myths were simply allegories, others saw them as warnings for the future. For even as humanity advanced, it began to repeat the same ancient pattern. We built towers that touched the sky, we reshaped life, we sought to merge with the very forces that once cast the angels down. And once more, we named it progress. But perhaps the story of the Watchers was never meant as a curse, perhaps it was a mirror. They were beings of perfection who longed to understand imperfection, we are creatures of imperfection who long to become perfect. Their fall is our reflection, their pride our inheritance, their knowledge our destiny. To reject what they taught would be to deny what we are, to embrace it blindly would be to repeat their ruin. The balance lies not in fear of knowledge, but in reverence for its source. There are those who say the Watchers never truly left. That their spirits move through history like wind through leaves, guiding the hands of artists, scholars, and visionaries. That every great leap in human understanding carries a faint echo of their voice. Others believe they wait beyond the veil, not in punishment, but in patience, watching the children of dust complete the story they began. For the war that started before time was not about destruction, but about understanding. And the question remains, can creation wield knowledge without losing its soul? In every age, prophets and poets have felt their presence. They speak of inspiration that burns too brightly, of dreams that reveal too much. From the flames of invention to the silence of meditation, mankind continues to walk the narrow bridge between illumination and arrogance. Some cross safely, others fall, as the Watchers once did. And yet, even now, there are moments when heaven seems closer, when compassion, truth, and wonder outshine greed and pride. Those moments are not small, they are victories in the endless war. For every act of creation done in love is a rebellion against the shadow. Every choice toward humility is a restoration of light. Perhaps that is the true meaning of the story, that redemption is not given, but chosen. That even those who have fallen may one day rise, not by claiming divinity, but by understanding it. The legacy of the Watchers is written not only in the ruins of the old world, but in the hearts of those who still dare to seek truth with humility. And as long as that spark survives, the balance between heaven and earth endures. Look to the stars, and you will see their memory. Look within, and you will see their reflection. The same fire that burned in angels burns now in mankind, the power to create, the will to rise, the choice to love. It is both gift and trial, curse and blessing. The story of the fallen is not the end, it is a beginning that never ceased. For the war of light and shadow was never fought to destroy, but to teach, to show that even in the deepest darkness, the light remains. And perhaps one day, when the last shadow fades and the stars sing once more in harmony, the watchers will be forgiven. The morning star will bow his head. And the song of creation will begin again, brighter, wiser, eternal. Until then, we remain its echo. Caught between heaven and earth. Remembering the fire that made us. And the fall that taught us how to seek the light. The stars have begun to tremble again, the same silent stirring that once preceded the war in heaven now ripples through creation. Signs appear where the ancient text said they would, in the heavens, in the earth, and in the hearts of men. Prophets long gone spoke of this time, of a final unveiling when what was hidden since the dawn would be seen once more. They called it the day of the Lord, the return of the morning star, the great reckoning. Not as myth, but as memory returning home. For ages, heaven has watched in silence as mankind walked the path of both angel and rebel. Each invention, each empire, each act of defiance brought the world closer to the moment written in eternity. When the children of dust would stand before the same choice that once divided the angels. And now, the cycle nears its end. The knowledge of the watchers has returned, not through stone or scripture, but through the pulse of progress itself. Man reaches again toward the heavens, he reshapes flesh, commands lightning, seeks to create life from code and metal. He whispers to the stars, and waits for an answer. And in that reaching, the voice that first said, "You can be as gods," speaks again, quiet, patient, triumphant. The morning star stirs in the abyss. His chains, worn by time and memory, grow thin as shadow. He gazes upward at a world that reflects his dream more perfectly than he ever could. A world where creation has forgotten its creator, where pride is called freedom, where knowledge has replaced wisdom. He smiles, for he sees himself not as the adversary, but as the victor of patience. The rebellion he began in heaven has taken root in every human heart. He no longer needs to ascend, for the world has descended to him. The old prophecies say that before the end, the veil between realms will tear. The stars will fall, the sky will burn, the dead will awaken memory, and the rulers of the unseen will rise again. Not as giants of flesh, but as forces within man, desires, systems, empires bound by a single will. The nations will gather under one voice, one mark, one promise, that of unity through power, of peace through control. And behind that voice, the morning star will whisper, "At last, my kingdom has come." But the heavens will not remain silent. The same light that cast him down will return, brighter and fiercer than before. For the source has never abandoned creation, only allowed it to choose. And when the world's choice is made, the silence of heaven will break once more. The stars will sing, the earth will tremble, and every heart will be laid bare before truth. Michael will rise again, his sword forged anew from the prayers of the faithful. The armies of light will descend not to destroy, but to separate shadow from fire, corruption from creation. And the morning star, radiant even in ruin, will stand once more before the throne he defied. There will be no war, for the outcome was written long ago, that pride cannot outlast love, that light cannot forget its source. Yet even as he falls for the final time, he will smile, for in his fall lies the proof of freedom, the very gift that made rebellion possible. The scriptures say the heavens will roll back like a scroll, the sun will fade, the moon will bleed. And in the final silence, all creation will remember, not with fear, but with clarity. For the story was never about punishment, it was about choice. The same choice given to angels will be offered to mankind, to serve love or to serve the self. And whatever the world chooses will shape the next dawn, the next creation, the next eternity. As the final light breaks, the voices of countless souls will rise, prayers, cries, songs of redemption. And through it all, one truth will stand unchanged, that even rebellion serves the purpose of the source. For through defiance came understanding, through fall came freedom, through death came renewal. The morning star will kneel, not in defeat, but in revelation, understanding at last what even he could not destroy. And the fire that once tore heaven apart will be made whole again. Then the heavens will sing as they did before time began. The watchers will awaken in mercy, the fallen will be remembered, not as enemies, but as lessons written in light. The earth will breathe as if reborn, the stars will shine not in division, but in harmony. And in that eternal dawn, the voice of the source will speak once more. Behold, all that was lost is found, all that was broken is mended, all that has fallen shall rise. The war that began before creation will end where it began, in love. And when the last shadow fades from the heart of man, the morning star's light will return to its true form, not as pride, but as praise. For even the brightest flame, when purified, becomes part of the sun. And creation, cleansed of all rebellion, will begin again, endless, eternal, and free. The story is ancient, yet it has never truly ended. From the light of heaven to the dust of the earth, it has passed through ages, through blood, through memory. It speaks in symbols carved in stone and in whispers that travel through dreams. And though the names have changed, the meaning remains. That knowledge is a gift and a burden, that light and shadow dwell not in the stars, but within us. Perhaps that is why you are here, not to be told what to believe, but to remember what was forgotten. Every myth carries a fragment of truth, every legend a reflection of the soul that created it. And maybe, just maybe, these stories were never about angels or gods at all, but about us. About the choices we make when faced with the same temptations, the same longing to rise beyond what we are. For as the heavens ward, so does the human spirit. We build, we fall, we learn, and we rise again, repeating the song of creation in every heartbeat. To understand the fallen is to understand ourselves, and to seek the truth behind their story is to walk the same path. Toward the unknown, where faith and curiosity meet. This is forbidden knowledge. A place where myth becomes mirror, where history, legend, and mystery intertwine. It is not a tale meant to end, but one meant to awaken. And if you have listened this far, then perhaps the fire of remembrance already burns within you. The question now is not what the angels did, or why they fell. But what we will do with the knowledge they left behind. Do you think the war in heaven ever truly ended? Or does it still echo within every human heart that dares to reach for the light?